TCA cycle. We'll introduce the TCA cycle. We will get to, so once we finish our process, we're still not there yet. We have one more step we're going to talk about, the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. So we'll do an intro over glycolysis, talk about TCA cycle, talk about conversion of pyruvate to TCA, and then maybe we'll get to step one of the TCA cycle. The TCA has 8 steps. Ooh. 8 steps, and it probably won't take us as long to go from TCA to get to glycolysis. Hopefully, we may finish up TCA. Or we may. Fine, Friday. We'll get close to TCA cycle on Friday. Anyway, so yesterday, somebody asked me, how in the world do you go from this to this with one reaction, with one arrow? The answer is you don't. I tried with all the other ones. So on this, if you want to make any sense, we have to move other electrons. These are not the only electrons moving. It was what I was talking about at the moment. It was the only thing I was talking about. But it's not a complete reaction mechanism. It's not complete. This is complete. The production of phosphoenolpyruvate. And that's where we ended, right? Phosphoenolpyruvate, we have completed 9 steps. We're in the last step, conversion of phosphoenolpyruvate to, let's go ahead and do it. We'll go back in a second. Let's go ahead and finish this. And then we'll go back and talk about a couple other topics that we kind of glossed over or completely missed. So the formation of pyruvate. Formation of pyruvate, our last step, converting phosphoenolpyruvate to. This is catalyzed by an enzyme called pyruvate kinase. Tell Siri to be quiet. Does anybody yell at Siri? Does anybody use Siri? I use Siri all the time. I yell
Sometimes.
I tell her how stupid she is. But she'll take it. I'm better yelling at her than anybody else. My wife does not take it near as well. Siri takes it best better wife. I'm just kidding. This is catalyzed by pyruvate kinase. Kinase tells you that what are we moving? Phosphoryl transfer, right? We're moving a phosphoryl group from one thing to another. We've seen phosphoryl transfers towards our substrate. Phosphoryl transfers towards our substrate requires ATP. Phosphoryl transfer away from our substrate generates ATP. This is going to generate net gain in glycolysis of 2 ATP. Formation of pyruvate, transferring a phosphoryl group from phosphoenolpyruvate to ATP. Reaction process. Phosphoenolpyruvate plus ADP leads us to ATP plus pyruvate. We're going to drop in there in just a second. We just said that this is in the presence of an enzyme pyruvate. This is also in the presence of magnesium. We've seen that in quite a few of our reactions, and then we'll talk about. We'll talk about in just a second the effects of magnesium on many of these reactions. This is the only other reaction that requires a monovalent cation, usually satisfied by potassium, to form ATP and pyruvate. Pyruvate, and you put an older something in there. Okay, that's not pyruvate. What is it? What is wrong with this pyruvate? It should be a methyl group, right? Pyruvate should have a methyl group, but this one doesn't. This is the product that's generated. So what if I asked you to compare this pyruvate with the methyl group that you just said? You said this should be methyl, right? So let's compare it with the methyl. That look good? How could you relate these? Enol form versus keto form. Right? The stable form of pyruvate is the keto form. And it is not even close. Equilibrium drives this very, 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 very far this way. Very far this way. So this helps explain two things. Actually, it helps explain one thing. A very large negative delta G naught. Two things explain this. One is we've already seen the delta G naught of the hydrolysis of PEP is large. It's larger than ATP. So phosphoryl transfer PEP is innately large, right? It should be at the top of the list when you look in the tables in your textbook for energies of hydrolysis, delta G naught, standard state-free energies of hydrolysis of various phosphoryl groups. PEP is at the top. There's another factor. Polymerization of pyruvate, it supports something else we talked about before. We talked about there are two ways to overcome positive delta G naught values. One of those was coupling, right? The other one was what? Concentration, getting rid of what? Products. So in this reaction, if there is some equilibrium between your reactants and your products, what happens when you create a product and it's immediately driven to something else? You're taking away your product, right? We're changing the concentration on this side. As soon as this is generated, it's immediately going to go to keto form. So equilibrium is also driving this reaction this way. So there are two factors. One, obviously we have hydrolysis. Phosphoryl transfer, very favorable, large negative delta G value. Also, thermodynamics, equilibrium is also driving this reaction this way, and it's taking away our product, right? So we virtually have no product. This is our third and final regulation step. Third and final regulation step. There are multiple forms of pyruvate kinase. In the literature textbook, there's a large section on this. I think I told you the other day, chapter 15, the regulation chapter. I also told you that metabolism regulation is an entire course. You can take this course. I think you need a Biochem 1. You need Biochem 2? Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Just my time. It's an entire course. It's an interesting course. When you talk about these pathways, and you go into very, very, very much detail in regulation of these pathways. A brief overview of this last regulation step. There are multiple forms of pyruvate kinase. One form, the liver form, you'll see that it's called L form. The L form is inactivated by a covalent modification. By phosphorylation. So the liver form is inactivated by a cyclic AMP dependent phosphorylation of the actual enzyme. What does this do? Inactivation causes this to basically turn around. What do I mean by that? Inactivating the step causes this pathway to turn around in favor of gluconeogenesis, right? Reverse direction going towards the formation of glucose. So it favors the direction of gluconeogenesis. What's happening to glucose in the liver? talk about this at step 1, remember? It's step 1, what is the difference in what's happening with glucose in muscle tissue versus what's happening in glucose in the liver? Glycogen, formation of glycogen, right? Formation of glycogen, go to the liver. All forms, so this is specifically liver form, all forms have many allosteric inhibitors. Yes. All forms have many allosteric inhibitors, acetyl-CoA. ATP. Acids. This makes sense, right? I have to mention these allosteric activators. Computing energy, AMP. Which one is it? Also an allosteric inhibitor. If I had an activator. Also for pyruvate kinase. The one thing I want to go back and talk about. So if, all right, in the Biochem textbook, there's a super cool figure in chapter 22, figure 22.8. It is a nice figure talking about, a nice figure showing the direction, and it kind of helps explain this as well, showing the direction of glycolysis versus direction of gluconeogenesis, and it actually breaks it down step by step and shows you different positive and negative regulators at each step where regulation occurs. So if you're having trouble following where does regulation occur and what types of regulation at each step, that figure pretty much paints the whole thing for you, both for glycolysis and for gluconeogenesis, and it kind of gives you a direction of how those things kind of coexist in here. Last thing I want to talk about for glycolysis. Last thing I want to talk about for glycolysis. Magnesium. So we kind of glossed over this step. Magnesium. Magnesium. Keep going back. Magnesium. I'm going to say this. Magnesium. 7. Magnesium. So we've got magnesium, magnesium, magnesium everywhere. Magnesium 10. We've got magnesium at 9. Got magnesium at 8. We've got magnesium at 8. We've got magnesium at 10, magnesium at 9, magnesium at 8, magnesium at 7. Don't have magnesium at 6. Keep going. Don't have magnesium at 5. Don't have magnesium at 4. We do have magnesium, right? Yep, here. We do have magnesium at 3. We don't have magnesium at 2. We do have magnesium at 1. Why is magnesium required in all these steps? Why is magnesium not in steps? What do all of the steps that require magnesium have in common? Think about it. Look at them. Phosphorylation of glucose, phosphorylation of fructose, transfer of a phosphoryl group, converting 3PG to 2PG. So what are we doing? We're moving a phosphoryl group. Dehydration, reaction 9, we are, this one's kind of different, right? We're stabilizing an oxyanion, a high valent, or a oxyanion intermediate. In 10, formation of pyruvate, we are transferring a phosphoryl group, right? What do you see in common? moving phosphoryl groups, not specifically, not just phosphorylation, not just phosphoryl transfer, but any reaction that requires the movement of a phosphoryl group, whether it's an isomerase of a phosphoryl group or a phosphoryl transfer. So in step 2, we have phosphoryl transfer. What's the point of magnesium? We talked about this. This is something you should be able to answer. Magnesium plays 2 roles, right? 2 roles. A positive role in hydrolysis and a negative role in hydrolysis. You remember those? A positive role and a negative role. The enzyme kinases, the kinase enzymes help to overcome that negative role. What are the 2 roles they play? A positive role and a negative role. How does it facilitate hydrolysis? How does it prevent hydrolysis?
Well, it prevents water.
How does it prevent? Let's do that one first. How does it prevent? What?
By inhibiting the formation of the transition state.
What is the transition state? What's unique about the transition state that it doesn't let it do that? A change, you're right, that is the answer, and it prevents a change in geometry, right? You have a tetrahedral, so you can imagine you have somewhere, you have a tetrahedral, so imagine you have something that is tetrahedral geometry. We'll just draw the oxygens coming off, and let's say this oxygen is stabilized by a bridge, right? And you have to distort this and change the shape. It's being stabilized, it's being held together by 2 arms. And it's hard to move things that are being held together at 2 different positions, right? So it prevents the formation of an intermediate. That intermediate is unique because it has a change in geometry. So something that is being stabilized by a branch point, that's why divalent metal cations are stabilizing factors, not monovalent metal cations. Potassium is not a stabilizer for this. Magnesium is a stabilizer for this because it can grab 2 different negatively charged oxygens and kind of hold on. So it prevents it by it prevents hydrolysis by stabilizing the tetrahedral form, and it prevents that geometry change into trigonal bipyramidal, right? How does it help? How does it facilitate hydrolysis of ATP? So the enzyme helps to overcome that effect, right? That's what enzymes do. They help it to reach a transition state. So the enzyme is going to help overcome that barrier. How does magnesium on its own facilitate hydrolysis of ATP? Positive charge pulls that negative charge of oxygen away from the phosphorus, making phosphorus a better electrophile, right? So you'll notice on most of these, all except for one, it involves nucleophilic attack on phosphorus, right? An oxygen or a sulfur involving nucleophilic attack. That's what we see here. We drew it in our reaction mechanism before. We have nucleophilic attack of oxygen onto a phosphorus. Step 6, kinase and nucleophilic attack of oxygen onto a phosphorus. Step 8 is a little different. Oh, actually it isn't. Nucleophilic attack onto a phosphorus. Step 9 is one that's a little different, right? Step 9 is different. And the fact that magnesium in this point is not facilitating nucleophilic attack. Magnesium is stabilizing, right? Stabilizing charged intermediate. In 10, another kinase reaction, hydrolysis reaction. It is stabilizing, or it is facilitating nucleophilic attack. One question somebody had is, why is magnesium not in this step? Why is it not necessary for this step? Why would you think it's not necessary for this step? One, do you have a phosphoryl group? No, it's not phosphoryl transfer. What is this? You're right, it is, right? The phosphorus is not the electrophile. You have a carbonyl group that is acting as an electrophile. This isn't nucleophilic attack of an oxygen, or if we had nucleophilic attack of a sulfur onto a phosphorus, then you would assume that magnesium would be necessary, but it's not. That's not what's happening. We don't have nucleophilic attack onto that phosphorus, so we don't need to make phosphorus in our phosphate a better electrophile, right? Don't need to, because it's not involved in any of the chemistry. It's a phosphate, so that's phosphate transfer, right? That's not phosphoryl transfer. We're incorporating a PO4 group here. when we do phosphoryl transfer, right, this oxygen is still here. This oxygen was here. We only added a PO3 group, right? We didn't add a PO4 group. The oxygen was here from our OH group. Okay. Any questions over glycolysis? None, right? You know all of them. There is an overview of what you should know for your exam. Again, when it comes to regulation steps, knowing the mechanism of action for all of these regulation steps is not what not what we are going for in this class. If that is what interests you, then I encourage you, if you take Biochem 2, take that right. Take that right. It is an entire semester of that. What you should know is one, what are regulation steps? So what are your regulation steps for each of these cycles? What are positive and negative activators or inhibitors at these regulation steps? Specifically, you should know how step 1 is a kind of unique regulator, right? The difference between hexokinase and glucokinase helps to regulate glycolysis. In step 3, there are communication factors between other pathways. That's unique. You should know about those. A lot of these steps make sense. Things that tell us that we have enough energy usually are inactivators, right? And things that tell us that we don't have enough energy are usually activators. Does that make sense? What's that? Make sure I didn't want to say anything else. Oh yeah, again, figure 22.8. If you only have the lineage textbook, find someone that has that other textbook and take a picture of that figure. It is a very nice figure, and it will kind of give you a grouping of, hey, these are the things I probably need. Okay, TCA cycle. Before we get into the TCA cycle, let's finish getting to the TCA cycle. So at the end of chapter something, I think 17, at the end of chapter 17, we talked for a few minutes about the 3 stages of catabolism. And specifically, we've been talking about oxidative catabolism, or we are going to talk about oxidative catabolism. Glycolysis is an anaerobic pathway, right? It does not require oxygen. It does not require oxygen. Oxygen is not present. You don't follow it from here, from the formation of pyruvate. You'll follow anaerobic pathways to regenerate NAD, right? So we can keep doing glycolysis over and over and over again. Under aerobic conditions, we'll follow an oxidative pathway. And that's what we're going to talk about. So for example, glucose. What are the 3 stages of oxidative, and not really glucose, let's say carbohydrates. What are the 3 stages of oxidative catabolism associated with carbohydrates and glucose, right? So assume we have carbohydrates, broken down carbohydrates, let's say glucose. Can we metabolize polysaccharides? No, right? We cannot metabolize polysaccharides. We can only metabolize monosaccharides. Polysaccharides broken down into monosaccharides. They can't be, they don't metabolize those. So we have glucose. And we have talked about so far glucose to pyruvate. And that should be super depressing. The fact that of all these things we have to talk about, this is all this, that's all we've done so far. I'm just not super depressing. What we are going to talk about right now, I shouldn't say that. Right now, in about 5 minutes, is the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. And this is kind of a convergence point of all oxidative pathways, of all catabolic pathways, converting, getting to acetyl-CoA. Once we can get to acetyl-CoA, the TCA cycle. So stage 2. Acetyl-CoA enters TCA cycle. Electrons are abstracted. Electrons are extracted. NADH, FADH2 are generated. And then we get to stage 3. At stage 3, this is what, so next step is, we're fixing to talk about formation of acetyl-CoA. As soon as we finish talking about acetyl-CoA, we're going to talk about the TCA cycle, the cycle in which electrons are funneled into the electron transport chain. And then stage 3 is when those electrons are funneled into the electron transport chain, a chain membrane bound electron carriers. Call that the electron transport chain. And when I say membrane bound carriers, what type of membrane? Remember this? Mitochondrial membrane, right? We're not talking about cell membrane, not mitochondrial membrane. So electrons are funneled through mitochondrial membrane bound proteins, electron carriers. And what happens here? This flow of electrons reduces oxygen to water, produce ATP, which is called oxidative or respiratory phosphorylation. So again, this is where we're going. We've talked about glycolysis. We're talking about the formation of acetyl-CoA. Next is TCA cycle. Lastly, we're going to talk about the electron transport chain. So where do those electrons go from your TCA cycle? Electrons are funneled through the electron transport chain through a process that we call oxidative phosphorylation. The movement of these electrons helps to reduce oxygen to water and produce ATP, ATPs. So, citric acid cycle is an oxidative process. An oxidative process that converts pyruvate to, we just said, acetyl-CoA. It generates CO2. You'll see a lot of decarboxylation reactions. Generates CO2 and ejection and removal of electrons in the form of NADH and FADH. But before we get to the TCA cycle, we got to get to the acetyl-CoA. Getting to the acetyl-CoA. Pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. Pyruvate. And remember, we're going to always refer to this in terms of glucose. So for one glucose, how many pyruvate do I make? 2, right? So 2 pyruvate. So if I generate NADH through this process, which we do, that's actually 2 NADH for glucose, right? Pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-coenzyme A through pyruvate. When I say pyruvate dehydrogenase, it's not just, it's a complex, very complex multimer. I say pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. The pyruvate dehydrogenase complex is a multimer consisting of 3 different types of enzymes. Many, it's not a trimer, it is a multimer. Human cell organisms up to 50 to 100 subunits. Process converts NAD to NADH. So the oxidation of pyruvate is coupled with the reduction of NAD to NADH. This looks like we have pyruvate. Pyruvate going to leaving. Lose CO2. We just said B. NADH. Incorporation of a coenzyme group. You'll see this written two different ways. Coenzyme A, but frequently you'll see coenzyme A with an SH with biol group on that side. Why? Because the biol group is what's participating in this chemistry. Biol group is what's participating in this chemistry. So we have decarboxylation reaction in which we lose a CO2 group. Our pyruvate is joined with our, this is not along with pyruvate, that would be an acyl group is joined with coenzyme A, and we lose CO2. So we generate CO2 and NADH in the process. I just told you the enzyme that does this is not a simple enzyme, it is a complex enzyme. Pyruvate. The hydrogenase complex is a function. I told you it is a complex protein with three different subunits, three different enzyme species. It is an enzyme multimer, not a trimer, consisting of enzyme 1, which is called pyruvate dehydrogenase. You can guess what chemistry that is. Enzyme 2 is called dihydrolapoyl acylase, and finally enzyme 3. Hydrogenase. So our enzyme complex consists of three different enzymes. We'll call this enzyme 1, enzyme 2, and enzyme 3. It is an extremely large complex of enzymes, the size of which varies by organism, but it is never a trimer, it is always a complex multimer. Not only is it relying on three different enzymes, it's also relying on 5 different cofactors. 5 different cofactors. Thiamine pyrophosphate, acetyl-CoA, not acetyl-CoA, coenzyme. Pyrophosphate, thiamine pyrophosphate, coenzyme A. Lipoyl lysine, which I'll always write LL. The electron carriers, FAD. Coenzymes. So it consists of 5 coenzymes, consists of 3 enzymes. How do these work together as required? Pyruvate is decarboxylated by enzyme-bound TPP. TPP here, maybe we should put ETPP. It's enzyme-bound
thiamine pyrophosphate. CO2 to form an intermediate, an enzyme-bound intermediate. Hydroxyethyl TPP, thiamine pyrophosphate. And this is pretty much enzyme 1. I'll draw that in a second. Oh, didn't talk about lipoyl-lysine. Lipoyl-lysine, I'm going to be right for a second. Lipoyl-lysine exists for this mechanism to make any sense. You know, 3 forms of lipoyl-lysine. Lipoyl-lysine exists as an oxidized form. So I'm going to put a little asterisk here so we can refer to lipoyl-lysine. It exists in 3 forms: an oxidized form, a reduced form, and an acetyl form, which is a modified reduced form. So we'll talk about the oxidized. And first, the oxidized form is a sulfur, disulfide. Thank you. I only spent my entire 5 years studying my PhD and working with disulfide. So, oxidized form contains a disulfide bond. A reduced form it's not. Disulfide bonds. The reduced form. Both of these are reduced. The acetyl form. Modification of a reduced form. Acetyl group attached. We have 3 forms: the oxidized form, reduced form, and acetyl form of the lipoyl-lysine. We'll just put this LL. So I'll denote them LL-ox, LL reduce. That's our intermediate for our acetyl. So our next enzyme supplies oxidized form, lipoyl-lysine. This is enzyme-bound lipoyl-lysine. Lipoic acid, lysine-bound lipoic acid, lysine-bound lipoic acid. This is able to form our intermediate, which is our acetyl lipoyl-lysine. This acetyl lipoyl-lysine. At this point, react with coenzyme A to eject acetyl-CoA. Our enzyme is left modified and is not degenerated. This leaves us with a reduced form. This leaves us with a reduced form of lipoyl-lysine. Regenerates on a 3rd enzyme. It's involved in the hydrogenation of lipoyl-lysine. Reduced form contains hydrogen, oxidized form contains no hydrogen, disulfide. So our goal is to get our reduced form back to our oxidized form. It needs help. It needs help to the enzyme. The enzyme consists. We need to move 2 hydrogens, right? So if we move 2 hydrogens, would be both hydrogens. H. NADH2 again needs to be regenerated back to E. This is done through E. the functions are using each writing, the exact function of each enzyme. And this is something you should know for your exam. You should know what enzymes are comprised of what each individual enzyme does. So you should know the 3 enzymes that make up this complex. You should know 5 coenzymes that participate in this reaction, and you should know the function of each enzyme. What does each enzyme do? If we go enzyme 1. Enzyme 1 is kind of right. So enzyme 1. Binds pyruvate, decarboxylates pyruvate, and primes it for enzyme 2. Enzyme 2. Here, so this is 2. So E1 and 2. Enzyme 2 is involved with a transesterification in which the SH group, so I call it the SH group of coenzyme A replaces the SH group of our lipoyl lysine. Enzyme 3 is involved with the facilitation of transfer of electrons from our reduced electrons in hydrogen from our reduced lipoyl lysine to generate oxidized lipoyl lysine. So now that we're at acetyl-CoA, 5 minutes. We can probably finish our overview of the TCA cycle. We're going to start with reaction 1 on Friday. So now that we're at acetyl-CoA, so we are here, right? We have finished stage 1. We're on to stage 2 of oxidative metabolism. On to stage 2 of oxidative metabolism. So how do we do? Glucose through glycolysis, through pyruvate. Just talk about through pyruvate dehydrogenase enzyme complex. You get the formation of 2 acetyl-CoAs. Here, this enters the TCA cycle. I mean, if you want me to. Glucose goes to pyruvate through glycolysis into acetyl-CoA through the pyruvate dehydrogenase enzyme complex and 5 coenzymes that we just talked about. Stage 1, step 1 of this reaction is a Perkin condensation. You read your textbook and it calls it a Claisen condensation. How gladly this is not. Step 2 is a isomerization reaction. It is a It's an isomerization reaction that involves dehydration and rehydration. Step 3, isocitrate alpha ketoglutarate, oxidative carboxylation. So what are we losing at this step? CO2, what else? Electrons, right? So we're losing electrons, we're losing CO2. Step 4, oxidative decarboxylation. What are we losing? CO2 and electrons. Step 5 is phosphorylation. So if I told you one of these 5 steps is magnesium sensitive, what would you guess? Magnesium sensitive. I would assume step 5 is magnesium sensitive, right? And this could, we talk about 2 different phosphorylations generating ATP, consuming ATP. This step generates ATP to GTP. Step 6. dehydrogenation reaction. What is involved in this? We're losing what? Electrons and hydrogens? Hydration reaction. Dehydrogenation reaction. So real quick before we're done, one last thing. So where are we losing electrons? We're losing electrons here, right? So we're losing CO2 and NADH. We're losing CO2 and NADH. We just said here we are generating ATP, ATP, or PTP. Hydrogenation reaction. In this step, we're not generating NADH, we are generating NADH2. And lastly, step 8, we are again generating NADH. So, real quick, before we're done, last thing. How much energy have we produced? How much energy? So so far, let's go all the way back to glycolysis. Glycolysis, what are we generating? Net of 2 ATP and what? 2 NADH. And the conversion of pyruvate, remember we said 2 pyruvate, right? So the conversion of 2 pyruvate to acetyl-CoA, what do we generate? So we just talked about 2 NADH. So the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA, the only thing we're generating is NADH, right? Sorry. The only thing we're generating, the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA is NADH. Remember we eject CO2, eject NADH, so that's 2 more NADH, right? 2 NADH. So if we have 2 pyruvate, that would make 2 acetyl-CoAs, so that would be 2 more NADH, 2 more NADH, 2 ATP, 2 FAD, 2 more NADH. So my goodness, how much have we made so far? So with this step, we have 2 ATP, we have 4 ATP, right? Slash ATP. 4 ATP. The DH, by the time we finished TCA cycle, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? 10 NADH. Yeah. 10 ADH, and we have 2 FADH2. So you can see the difference between, if this follows an anaerobic pathway, we don't do this. We're left with 2 ATP, 2 NADH, right? Pyruvate is converted to lactic acid. Don't generate, we actually consume this 2 NADH. So the only net gain we have under anaerobic conditions is 2 ATP. Aerobic conditions, oxidative conditions, we have all of these. We will talk about reaction 1 on Friday. We'll probably get most of the way through the TCA cycle. I'm guessing we'll get through at least the first 5 steps of the TCA cycle on Friday. Have a good week.